Okay. Welcome to everyone. You can all hear now?
Yes.
Okay. I want to thank you for coming to Bookends and Beginnings Bookstore. I know many of you have been here before. I see one person who's especially familiar right there. The bookstore is turned 8 years old this summer, which is, no small feat in the age of Amazon. It's not an easy thing. So,
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. One reason we make it in the age of Amazon is that people continue to love browsing in a bookstore, and people continue to love coming to events and meeting the people who write the words that are inside the books. And it's been a long 2 years when we haven't been able to do very much of that, and it feels really good to have people back in the store again. So thank you for coming. This event came about because Gary Light approached me a few weeks ago about the possibility of doing a poetry reading here at the store that would be in support of the resistance in Ukraine. And I just loved that idea. I think pretty much everybody feels very deeply troubled, to say the least, about the situation there. And I just want to say, as I told Gary on a personal note, that 2 of my 4 grandparents fled turmoil there more than 100 years ago. One from Odessa and one from Kherson. And I think I really grew up with the illusion that the world that I was born into was a much safer world, where somehow we were evolving beyond the kinds of naked aggression that changed the shape of Europe in the 20th century. And that's obviously not true. The poets who are here tonight all have much deeper, more direct connections to Ukraine than I do, and I'm going to let Gary introduce them. Gary himself comes from Kiev, Ukraine, but has lived in the United States since 1980. His several books of poetry were published in the US and Ukraine starting in 1992. His English language poetry book entitled Confluences appeared both in the US and Ukraine, and Gary has also translated war poems of Ukrainian poets.
Thank you.
Gary, thank you so much for organizing the event tonight. I want to mention that the proceeds from book sales, all book sales tonight, any money that you spend in the bookstore is going to go to 4 charities that do work in Ukraine. And when you're at the counter, you can also choose to make a cash donation, or you can go to the event listing on our website, and there are links to the websites of all these organizations, so you can make a direct donation if you choose. So now, please welcome Gary Light.
Thank you so much. Thanks for. It really didn't take much effort, as I recall that conversation of ours. I just mentioned one word, Ukrainian, you said yes. Unfortunately, I guess we would prefer for Ukraine to be one of those countries that we kind of love in the background, know that it exists, and for those of us to whom it's dear, we know that there is not often a direct flight. There were some from Chicago or New York, but with a stopover in any city in Europe, you get this feeling that you could fly over the ocean and then have a drink in the bar, then find that gate, be it in Rome and Warsaw and London and Paris, and it's usually not easy to find gate, but you find that gate, and in 2 hours you sort of land in your chapel, which is a fairy tale kind of thing. But in 2014, not in 2022, as a lot of people think, but in 2014 it all changed. And I think Ukraine and those of us who love Ukraine probably would give a lot for Ukraine not to be on the front page of the New York Times or the Washington Post. what could happen. Poetry is a interesting thing. It's we talked about it today before the meeting with our friend Lundh, who's a famous poet, as opposed to the rest of us. We are semi-famous, but trying to get there. And I asked him, does he deem poetry to be therapy? He said no. I have to admit that for me it's kind of especially in this last year. So we figured we would ask you to join us today and for us to share some thoughts with you. Sometimes they would rhyme, more often than not they won't, because in English they usually don't. Thanks for finding the time. And right now I would like to introduce Lundh, who will be our first reader today. Thank you so much.
Okay. Tall guy doesn't like microphones. I think I'm going to wave it and just use my own normal reading voice. I've been doing this sort of thing since 1962 in front of crowds, so I'm kind of used to it. I'm honored to be here. I'm honored that Gary was gracious enough and kind enough to invite me to read. This is my first outdoors reading since fall of 2019. I've been zooming around the world. We talk about my running from North Carolina to New Brunswick on Tuesdays, but I never leave the house. And so this is comfortable territory again. I had no direct connection to Ukraine, aside from being a human being, a parent, a grandfather, a great-grandfather. As much as anything else, I suspect I was asked because I am a combat veteran from Vietnam. And part of my job this evening is not to make you comfortable. Okay? I had a friend back in 1985, a colleague at Northeastern, who told me that poetry had nothing to do with wars and revolutions. I disagreed with him then, and I found something from Toni Morrison that also disagrees with him. Certain kinds of trauma visited on people are so deep, so cruel, that unlike money, unlike vengeance, even unlike justice or rights or the goodwill of others, only writers can translate such trauma and turn sorrow into meaning, sharpening the moral imagination. A writer's life and work are not a gift to mankind. They are its necessity. The Danube flows into the Mekong. Down the Lena and along the Bear at Beaver Creek, these and all the other bloodied waters finding paths to lakes and ocean waves caressing every shore, banks and beaches marked by broken futures, tattered bodies, scattered shoes. If you gave the order for the fusillade, fired the final volley of the massacre, I need to wonder, when does justice have a role? The winter morning breaths of others have the weight of yours. In pictures, we cry aloud after a fairly famous statue, which I didn't note on the poem, of children who were massacred in Eastern Europe during the Second World War. We are the ones you're forgetting. The truth behind the photographs from places like Nanking, Lodz, Stalingrad, Trombong, Kosovo. Too many places long before them and since. We are the ones, mostly nameless, whose dirty faces and torn childhoods make you weep with anger's heat before the tears you shed slake the fire, leaving nothing changed come sunrise. We are the ones trampled under by marching boots when victory parades loudly through your cities. Build empires on our helpless bodies, if you will, but forsaking us, forfeit your hopes of heaven. The sounds of water. Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, August 1956. I climb down from the dock the way a new colt stands up. Somehow, I settle in the boat, rocking its green wood without turning it turtle, without a sudden swim. I'm 8 next week. My hand trails in the water as the sound of the lake mixes, goes part and parcel with the oars, outboards, reels singing, fish leaping, bright laughter. South China Sea, September 1968. I step out on the catwalk, sea-legged and confident. Settling on the radar platform, setting tools on its gray paint, I look across the flight deck to the chaplain and the body. I've just turned 20. Their hands are anointed red. The sound of the sea is dim beneath the throb of rotor blades, gunfire from the beach, the whispers of absolution. Asian still lifes. 1. Flying the first wave in at dawn, we crossed the tree line and began to take fire. And I, standing at the machine gun, closed my eyes and swung the barrel, praying blindly for some resolution. 2. At Fubai to pick up ammunition, I'm wrapped in cartridges and a flak vest, riding in a jeep with some lieutenant who will be here driving generals while I'm in Hong Kong getting drunk. 3. Some Marine bled to death on the flight deck today. They flew 6 casualties in at one time, and all they could see to do was have the chaplain give belated last rites. 4. I was going to write before and tell you all about the color of the sea here, but we took fire from the beach, so there really wasn't time. The sun is settling now. It's the color of the sea. 5. If something happens to go wrong and I don't make it home, do you think you can remember me just for a few days before you start to cry? Since my wife is over there, oldest grandson served a tour in Afghanistan. Lead driver on a Marine truck convoy with mine rollers. His truck got blown up 4 times. He stopped counting the number of times that they didn't go off. This comes from that. IED, QED. Depleted uranium is still on the periodic table. It waits there for you, or you can search if you feel prompted. The tap of your fingers will seem a sudden silence as the sun sets. Led Zeppelin's Stairway issues from the boombox. Above and behind you at the 50, the new guy screams along, off-key. You holler something to him, and you miss the signal from the sensor. The shell was stolen from a stockpile. It took 4 men to hide it in your path. Even as I run from my truck to yours, I know there's no reason to hurry. Heavy metal thunder echoes from the hills. They're screaming, but no climbing notes to match. And your dog tags, wrapped like warning bands for silence, they weigh more than worlds upon my palm. Mother and child. When you were 1, you spent the day at Disneyland. with your mother, my uncle, and I. We took turns watching you in your stroller from ride to ride. That night in the crib, you gazed wide-eyed for an hour, digesting, I guess, what you'd seen, and then smiled sweetly in your sleep. You won't remember it, but we talk of it still. It's early in the 5th decade since that day. Your son is back from his war, just as I was then from mine. His gaze across the dinner table is hooded, distant. And I hope when he's a father, he'll dream of wondrous times, and fear that when he's a grandfather, he'll scratch at hidden scars and remember his bodies at the end of the day. I would music make once more. When the last sun has fallen, there will be a need for bards to sing dirges and old lullabies, to remember lives cut short. I will set down my useless rifle, take my guitar in wearied hands, and play a saint's procession to lead them to your hearts. When the last shell is fired, there will be silence unknown during the years of fighting, and a need to honor it. I will find a whole piano, miraculous in the rubble, and play a gentle melody so babes may peaceful sleep. And when the last war is over, there will be no parade to celebrate the peace, no dancing in the streets. I will stand atop my tank and play the violin, a requiem for all that have and has been lost. And lastly, a poem that I'm going to give you in English, and then Gary's going to read a translation of. The scene is 2 women, nurses, drivers of an ambulance in France in 1944 after the Normandy invasion. A terrible week here in so many ways. Our infantry, with armor for support, fought building by building towards the center of the city from 3 sides, forcing most of the enemy out and back to the river. Well, that's a good thing. Oh, so many casualties, so many lives broken or ended. Not just combatants, but civilians, from the elderly to their grandbabies. We've dealt with the carnage, pouring all our expertise into lost limbs and gaping chests, but emotionally, I don't think any of us have a snowflake's chance of recovering. During a lull yesterday, Marie and I tried to forget. Sitting on the running board of the ambulance with our needles and balls of yarn, 2 women like any 2 women, if far from home and loved ones, in a moment of peace. This morning, a sniper got Marie. I'll write again when I can speak past the tears. Thank you all.
I have to admit, I translated this translated this poem for an emigre magazine in New York a while ago. But I translated it into a language which one of the famous poets in Kiev calls a language of the enemy. It's a paradox in a way. We grew up in a country which no longer exists, and in any empire we grew up with a certain language. It's not the language's fault. What the country of its origin, or the country that claims to own that language, is doing to Ukraine, and before that the Czech Republic and Hungary, Afghanistan. You mentioned that we're in Afghanistan. And Leonard is the only one who actually had to be in camp, but hopefully there is no one else here in the audience. Maybe there is somebody else. We can't even imagine in our worst nightmare what that means. And we were hoping, after the Great War, in which a lot of children and adults died, it would never happen again. But our generation, my best friend, my classmate in Kiev, was also a driver for combat convoys only for the Soviet army in the 1980s Afghanistan, and he was very badly injured. So our generation also had to. My parents took me out of that when I was 12, brought me here. So we have a choice whether to join the army or not. Well, something. Yeah. So the language, it's for everybody to decide. I have my Ukrainian on the background and the subconscious somewhere, and I'm relearning it, and it's coming back, and I'm extremely happy.
That's really great.
Thank you. It's a beautiful language. I will try to do justice to it. So I started saying that I translated it into Russian. The magazine with translation and a couple of others, people who read here at the Bookends and Beginnings, who are friends of mine. I translated them into Russian, and that magazine comes out next month. But for tonight, I attempted to translate it into Ukrainian and failed miserably. So, another side note of sorts, during the pandemic and obviously during the war, we have what is called the Ocean Bridge. There's a few of us who are participating in that. It's a Zoom gathering of poets and writers. Two of them are here, we're actually still counting me, but two of them, my dear friends, are here today. The rest of them are in Kyiv, in Israel, in Ukraine. And the reason there is a video camera in the back there is because they asked for us to videotape that. So, as a lawyer, I have to ask everybody if you don't mind this being videotaped. If you're not in the picture, we will try not to abuse your rights. Enough verbosity. There's a flag behind me. It's a Ukrainian flag. A flag that was featured and given to me in Kyiv in 2017 when some other people from that gathering of ours, we were reading in the military hospital. I mentioned in the beginning that this war did not start in 2022. It started in 2014. And even though Kyiv looked like a peaceful, beautiful European city, not unlike Prague, there were helicopters and payloads of wounded warriors coming in from that area every day. We were reading in that hospital. And afterwards, the volunteers, the nurses, presented me with this flag. So I figured it would be symbolic if they have it here today as well. Such a long, long introduction to a translation of Lundh. So for those of you in the audience who speak Ukrainian, please forgive me if I don't do justice for it. I asked a friend of mine who is also on that bridge with us from Lviv. So the translation isn't perfect Ukrainian, Western Ukraine for sure. I will attempt to do that. There's somebody in the audience who could do it better, we can do it again.
I'll let you know.
All right. Тиждень тут видався жахливим. В усіх можливих значеннях слова «жах». Наша піхота, яку підтримували танки та артилерія, вела вуличні бої за кожен будинок і рухалась до центру міста, відтісняючи ворога до річки з трьох боків. Здавалося б, не успіх, але як багато втрат, як багато життів обірваних або скалечених. І не лише життів воїнів, а й мирних жителів, від старих до їхніх онуків. Ми намагалися опанувати реалії цієї бойні, застосовуючи усі наші знання та досвід задля припинення кровотечі в місцях втрачених кінцівок та інших відкритих ран, але на рівні емоцій не думаю, що хтось із нас коли-небудь зможе отямитись. На це у нас не залишилось жодних шансів. Учора, в момент короткого затища між боями, ми з Марі намагалися відволіктись. Сиділи за спицями для в'язання та клубками вовни на відкинутому борту нашої санітарної машини. Наші дві звичайнісінькі жінки, які чомусь опинилися далеко від дому, від рідних, в примарному часі завмерлого бою. Цього ранку снайпер підсилив Марі. Згодом я напишу це, коли зможу говорити крізь сльози. I thought that Leonard mentioned that this was written in 1944 France. This happened last week in Ukraine, and this keeps happening. I would like to introduce a good friend of mine, an amazing poet from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, РИБЧИНСЬКИЙ.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks for coming. I'm originally from Kharkiv, Ukraine. In 2014, my city became one of the major hubs for refugees from the east. And now my city is more than 70% destroyed. Those refugees have had to flee again. And some of them no longer alive. I know a lot of this because my friends were volunteering helping those refugees to resettle. Now they're volunteering to help those refugees to resettle. Okay. I will start a little bit before the war. This poem started during pandemic time, and then it stopped, and then the war happened. There was Bucha. Bucha was liberated with many atrocities, and we saw the photos like in this ruined city, the sorrow city, 2 people dancing tango. It turned the page and this poem completed. And you will probably see where it stopped and where it picked up. The heaven of sounds descend to my burning palms, connecting all puddles and dots to pandemic puzzle, with every pharmacy ready to issue a pardon. But I'm not guilty. And then it reveals me in all white shades of blind rage, turns in as a criminal and turns over as copied page, and I'm rushing to leave that stage, but it's hard to open the cage with my hands so dirty. At this time, I pull out few screws from the forgotten old crown and complete the clown's outfit with a hospital gown. I'll be beaten to the ground with each drop of an earthly sound. But the dance is not over. The dance is not over. The death is not over. The death wears guilt like Prada, a gown, a kilt. Remember, you called our moment one of a kind. It was so kind. It was so dangerous, delicate, so intense. The death breeds a bird and a squirrel, all things in past tense. The death doesn't give it a damn. She just gave you a chance. She wanted to dance. This earned by suffering tango of broken glass, through fallen road signs of the prophecies, hints and clues, through swollen wounds of the music spilled like a blood, by the naked time barely hanging on the last few screws, to the shattered truth of lose it or lose it again. To the flipping a coin and staying on top of the game, to scattered pain in the rain, dissolving your fears and shame, and planting the change grain by grain, letting current flow, to trust in your ruined soul, to stranger's hand, to live in remote again on repeat, not repent. When the dead ends meet, it sparkles, and love never ends, and the light is not over. And second poem is very recent. Partially it comes from this story that I told you about in my city, Kharkov. I have still friends who stay in Kharkov, they cannot move. I'm picking up my mom's friend, she's 85 years old, she stayed in Kharkov until recent time when we convinced her to evacuate. And partially it is sparkled by a reaction of Russian poets that I know to the events in Ukraine. Painting. You hear me well, right? I'm painting with pain, painting heavily, stroke by stroke, line by line, lie by lie. Those bright colors no longer fly. The yellow and blue are dumped in the puddle of red. Long dead is the child, weeping woman cradled. I'm painting with the horror of deliberation. The court of the Russian Federation has deemed Ukrainian soldiers terrorists. I'm painting with panic, taking each risk to breathe. As a missile sent from Russia with love are crushing the ribs of houses, hospitals, schools, while the prominent Russian poets are watching to find it cool, to find it worth every death, each corrupted soldier's soul, as they see the new shining order was soaking the old cracked world in blood, drowning, smashing it into the ruin, and drawing the world free and green, and painting the world with Ukraine in it. And here I will make an interruption and I will reintroduce our great friend and the inspiration of this reading, Gary Light, and it's gonna be for a reason. We want to tell you about our friends, husband and wife, poets from Kiev, who it's just an amazing story. She actually moved to Ukraine several years ago to join him from Russia, and she embraced Ukraine, and she's going through all the events of this war. And her husband enlisted into the army as the war started. It was so touching. And it's a story of love and it's a story of suffering. And we tried to retell it with their poems. Gary. We were in this bridge for about a year since pandemic started. And we got, as people who meet every week and share their thoughts and feelings, we got close to each other, so we feel their pain. To an extent, we cannot ever say that we feel what they feel.
Thank you so much. You did a great job. Due to the technical failure back then. So yes, that Zoom meeting that we have is called the Ocean Bridge. It literally is the bridge over the ocean. And we used to joke around before the war started, as pandemic was kind of becoming more familiar, that our meeting point is somewhere over Reykjavik, Iceland. But it really is not a joke anymore. So, Pavel and Irina, as Leah said, we've met them. No, I did not meet them in person. I, as you, met them through Zoom. But we are all hoping to meet in the botanical gardens of Kiev, where we all grew up around, and meet in person. And Oля, you will be there too, just so you know. Okay. So, what we did in March when things were becoming really bad and everybody thought that Kyiv would fall in 4 days. I was in New York. I was actually on a plane to New York, and I wrote an email to Leah and I said, we need to translate them. We need to translate them into English. And let the native speaker maybe correct us afterwards, but we need to make sure that they exist in English. Because I would like to mark my words, but I'm not sure. Pavel got back from the front. I'm running a little bit in front of myself, but he did join the army, just like Leah said, in a very dramatic way. He literally walked out the next day it started. He's 54 years old. He just left. And it was supposed to be a territorial defense, but it became a full-scale Ukrainian army. He is at the front lines today. But about 2 weeks ago, a miracle happened. He got a leave for 3 days. And in those 3 days, we were able, actually from America, with our friends in Kyiv, Alexei Nikitin and the rest, to organize a poetry reading for him in the Bulgakov Museum in downtown Kyiv. And that happened. And you can't write a novel like that. Several hours after that reading, he left back to the front. And we were praying for him every day, because he's right there in that house. So, these are our attempts of letting you guys hear what they do poetry-wise. A translation is a very ungrateful thing. Unless you're Pasternak, who actually, in my opinion, sometimes makes Shakespeare a little less ancient, other translations sort of tend to lose out in comparison with the original. But we love these two people, so we really try. We're going to introduce them just a little bit. So Pavel Ritsar, he used to be under the pseudonym ПОКЛАД. He's mostly a web author from Kyiv. His real name is Pavel Ritsar, and he was born in Kyiv in 1968. We talked about this year a lot. And started writing poetry kind of late, in 2006. I think he's being a little facetious in that. I think he wrote poetry before. This is not something you choose, it's something that chooses you. He published in Новая Реальность, in the Interrealность Literary Almanac, and also in following literary magazines. No need to list them, there's a lot. On February 25th, 2022, the day after the invasion of Ukraine, as a volunteer he joined the Ukrainian armed forces and left for the front lines to defend his homeland against Russian invaders. You want to talk about Irina, or we'll just get to the poetry right away?
Let's get to the poetry. Irina is also a very famous poet. She became famous where she lived, in Irkutsk. She has books published and participated in many periodics. But right now she's in Ukraine. And we'll start with it.
So, normally, in a gentleman's way of doing things, ladies first. But in our program, I have Pavel's poem first. Chivalry is not dead, it just happened this way. So this poem is called, this is Pavel Ritsar. The poem is called A Poem from the War. But he's a modernist, so we tried as much as we could to reflect that in the translation. Imagine the scene. He's sitting there in the trenches. He literally can see the trenches of the other side. And he imagines the guy on the other side and his conversation with his mother. Or a conversation that his mother has with him. And subtly, he underscores how different both sides are. So he's speaking from the voice of the other side. Mom, oh mom, is partaking in sewing process. Mom, oh mom, will be a beautiful one. Mom, oh mom's beloved Sonny has grown out from the cradle. Mom, oh mom's headgear is a proper one. Mom, oh mom is more gracious than ashamed. She preaches to her lad, son, those jewel burns may not be up our avenue. Oh, my restless, foolish scoundrel, be more serious at least a bit. Enough of that pretending with those street kids that you're Captain Grant's children. You're not. That's a whim of yours, a child's illusion. Those are the stuffings of the overseas strangers. We have our own glorious braces. We are Grand Russians by birth. It all has been absorbed. It has grown through us. It has bitten into us. It all formed into a soldier's baggage, looking out the window randomly. Mom, oh mom, is awaiting the sun from the war. A leaf would tremble, dust would rise somewhere far. Mom, oh mom, is a little worried. She comes out to meet him to the road. All that's dear to her, which remains to mom, oh mom, is coming, swimming, for the heart to flourish proudly. Russian worldly spring foundation, modest nautilus, made from a zinc. It's a coffin.
Clouds decorate with snow our lucky winter day. I'm knitted socks for my husband, my man's working on his flail. I'm mending my husband's chain mail. I'm mending my man's armor. My man's singing while adjusting his new bow and fitting errors. My man is singing while adjusting his new bow and fitting arrows. Then he reaches under our bed to drag out his ancient sword and tells me, everything is ready. The gun is loaded to shoot. I'm watching oil vanishing as the table lamp gets dimmed. Is it really what it looks like in fraternal kingdom's realm? Does it ever have to be like this between fraternal kingdoms? Washing husbands' feet before bedtime, pouring water fresh and hot, wipe them dry, sing lullaby, on his shoulder rest my head, and fall asleep.
So the next poem, we usually read our own translations, but the next poem has been translated by Leah. But I'll read it because it's Pavel's poem, so that's how we figure. The fatal flare and final blast so awful, from outskirts, through misty guts of eerie cerulean glow. Do oxen low? Do oxen low? Do oxen ever low? Does time not fly through bleeding edge of sky to follow the migrating cranes exalt and bring an urge and essential desire to gather in a crowd, join the squad, to burn out bright, while sun is dull and frail, to crush the rotten whisk of ravening slow, and kick oars butts throughout the wild prairies, and nail them through the fertile wild prairies ground. For those of us Ukrainian speakers in the crowd, there is a good hidden quote in that "Ревуть воли."
And this one was translated by Gary, as you can imagine, and I will read it for Irina. On a Sunday, we were covered in whitish growths. My name in certain language means peace and calm of sorts. But I disagree, because peace is indeed a sword. Ukrainians nowadays have more rights to the Russian language word by word. Those whitish growths are really having the money. When some have no water, others deem pocket knives as prana. My kids carry forks and other sharpened objects and say that our victory is certain among other projects. We are not hiding in basements, choosing the floor by the sky. Under us is the magic of Kiev, that's Ukraine in the rye. Rye and wheat will be ours, while quinoa grass will be eaten in towns where the horde gets in trouble and settles for less.
Pavel Ritzer. The snow is black and grainy over the Ravens Exchange, as if it is little gaming, grain coffee's superior range. The cold which is swift and pinching, the sun as dark abyss, the negative nausea inching, in line with the morning bliss. The marching will come to fruition, the cross would give it all to the hill. Your soul and my submission, in cold like darkness at will. You will deal so nonchalantly with several doorknob locks. The air so moaningly darkly, salty and obvious thus. You would emerge so dirty, bending yourself to my will. The anti-birch frying sorties, rebel grey into black grill. So, to you I have not been given. I'll utter to whispering bunch, my llama-like modesty even akin to the teeth and cold crunch. The warmth of that first embracing is like that burn of the lips. You'll cure the dark by light tracing, no matter how dense it is grease. I have to admit, and I share that with Pavel, sometimes we speak when there's a quiet on the front, we exchange Facebook messages, welcome to the future 21st century. I said, Pavel, I translated your poem, but it sounds like Leonard Cohen. He's like, awesome, I love it. I love Leonard Cohen.
Before I read the next one, I want to say two words. First of all, there's pikes in this poem, and it's a little bit foreign for American, but in Russian folklore, pike is sort of a magic fish that makes your wish fulfilled. And then there is Lesya Ukrainka intersection. Lesya Ukrainka is famous Ukrainian poem, and it's a real intersection in Kiev. Forgive me, as I will forgive you too. Forgive. Don't Lord Shepherd sling the stone. You see how I'm waving flag like crazy. It's white. I made it from the hospice ship. Be hard in love, but turn your softer cheek, forgiving my lethargic, sluggish laziness. Remembering all hot and sparkling words you daily forged and crafted like blacksmiths, while sparring them like change, just once a quarter. And I rejoiced. My palm was feeling burned. I bent the corner when the page was torn, highlighting in the text all catchy quotes. Forgive me, and I will forgive as well. I'll drop your coins to the wishing well. You never caught me pike, didn't kiss my stubborn tears. At Lesya Ukrainka's intersection, you gave all hugs to strangers with affection, instead of caressing my silky golden hair. Oh, let's forgive each other, all in full. Let day we meet to be again postponed, rescheduled to the new epoch, new fresh start, because we both got used to waiting game, to never publish work that settled on our tables, to greet from far apart with Christmas cards. And thank you. And on this note, forgive me, I will turn it over to Gary, our great friend, our great poet, really Ukrainian-American poet, because he came here as a child and he sort of grew in this culture, unlike me, let's put it this way.
Thank you. I was once accused by a great friend who has a birthday today in New York of being falsely modest. Perhaps, but I'll say that it appears to me that there is a little too much in me tonight. But it is what it is, and I'll ask you to deal with it. So, Len, I mean, we're kind of all rhyming with each other here. Leonard today mentioned that great war that was supposed to be the last one. A lot of children died. There was Holocaust and Stalingrad and Auschwitz. All those things that we were so supposed to learn from. Nope, we did not. And in a few days there will be yet another solemn anniversary of Babi Yar, which is a ravine in my city of Kyiv, and I see a great friend of mine from high school here in the first row, Natasha's city, Yulik's city, and Olya's city, and some other people's city here in the audience. Babi Yar is our wound. It's a wound that will never heal. And yet, our Russian friends in the Russian Federation decided that this is when they're going to hold the sham. Well, there's a word for it, but as a lawyer, I shouldn't say it. The enemy of Ukraine in this war is like a little card house. They think that they're this big empire with muscles that will fold like a card house. And Ukraine will take credit for it. With American hires. So, this poem is about that war. The generation of our parents, for some of us, was supposed to be the last one. Without sounding too dramatic, but it's true. We weren't supposed to be born. Our grandmas were on last or next to last trains out of Kyiv in 1941, ironically, into Russia. And then, I guess we weren't around, so we had no say, but our parents returned to Kyiv as little kids, thank God. And we were born against all odds, really. My affection to Leonard Cohen is bottomless. Hence, one of his poems he wrote, "The odds are there to beat." Leonard Cohen. A brighter ray of sharp perception comes to life, comes from within. It's pondering and subtle. Such imperfection of the clouds feeds all strife. The year before subconscious childhood resurfaces to stutter. The year before Prague witnessed Russian tanks, apparent spring succumbed to winter's echo. Our parents braved the cold. So many things. And we appeared to fill the void of murder rhetoric. First memory brought forth the Babi Yar. From those ravines, I seek the answers even now. My phantom burns from bullet holes don't get me very far. The pain excruciating as I bow. Our genetic burden overall is of the sort one wouldn't wish as wind on willows. Don't even notice petty theft at all, as our thoughts are on the march to Salaspils. Not much has changed. Equator measures still, yet a brighter ray will always pierce the cloud cover. Who had forgotten, forgiven perpetrators, victims, will, deadlock in rhetoric. There's nothing to discover. Yet we appeared. The odds were there to beat. Our core peculiar on verge of constant tearing, we won't give up the corner of our street. Despite attempts of President Goebbels, Hess, or Goering. Len and I talked about poetry not being political, and it's not. But forgive me for saying that, and I guess in the shadow of my alma mater over there, I could say that. We came to the brink, and we're still not out of the muddy waters. God bless America, but the America that we love, not the one that was threatening us on January 6th. My last poem for today, or next to last, is the one that I'm being told earned me that flag. Because we do live in the future. We totally do. And how? Because we can communicate with each other. I mean, Pavel is at the trenches. But I'm gonna write to him and maybe even call him right after. And if they're not fighting at the moment, he'll answer. That's how communication progressed. But we still haven't learned not to kill each other. Even in the streets of Chicago, really. August morning, the ongoing war. The army captain was dying in the vivid sunflower field in Ukraine. From that morning, there remained just a third of the battery charge on his phone and some lingering minutes of credit. It was clear to the captain there will be no mercy to anyone captured, as there would be no welcoming music to whoever escaped this calamity whole and alive. As the price of a life was declining abruptly, all night long, after a bloody and desperate day, he led the diminishing platoon of young soldiers survivors through the fields of the ravines under heavy artillery rounds, as the Russians, abundant in their ammunition reserves, kept it coming, distributing death in measured proportions. It appeared that the air was burning, as were all the sharpened remnants of the officers' oath. In the morning, a Russian sharpshooter picked out the rest of the most inexperienced fighters from the captain's platoon, while wounding the captain, denying him the use of his legs, which he covered in soil. As the captain observed, the enemy was closing in. Getting out through shallow ravines was no longer an option. He took out his old but reliable Nokia phone and attempted to dial a number in Kiev. At home on the left bank of the Dnipro River, his wife answered in jubilant voice, "Dear, fine. We were so worried. The nightmares we see are so awful. You really should try and call more often. You're exhausting us with all those worries." His daughter, a student accepted to study abroad, then grabbed the phone and demanded, "Come home soon, Daddy. We really, really miss you." He envisioned them both in the kitchen watching the dubbed American sitcoms on the Soviet-era TV. While the captain, in and out of consciousness, smiled and spoke, "Girls, I love you so much. What's with those pesky felines of ours, the carpet destroyers? How are things with the Dynamo Kyiv? Are they playing good soccer? Are they in the bowl? As the season is rolling." A battered, bullet-ridden Ukrainian army emergency ambulance somehow got through the encirclement and suddenly appeared from out of nowhere as the nurse and the doctor tried to get the captain inside. The Russian tanks were fast approaching from the side of the ravine. The ringing, it was either a church bell or a concussion. The captain couldn't really tell. The paratroopers who followed the tanks shot the nurse dead right away. They were hesitating as to what to do with the doctor. When one of the Russian officers appeared to have recognized him, they were in the same Soviet Union, serving in Afghanistan in the 80s. Thus, August burned over Ukraine. The captain was dying. It would forever remain unclear whether there was reproach in the eyes of the captain, as lingering as that burning August air in the rhetorical question. Who will be burdened with all the forgiving to be done, in accordance with the unspoken terms of the criminal elite, or conceivably through the guidance of the scriptures, or perhaps the concepts of the Quran. Once so this poem was distributed through the internet and somehow got me semi-famous in Ukraine, which I was praying would never happen at this price. And then the nurse, one of the nurses at the hospital where we were reading, she approached me and said, you lied. I said, what do you mean? But they're all kind of kindly cynical over there. She said, he didn't die. I said, who didn't? I didn't say he did, but the captain didn't die, she said. He's right there in the last row in that wheelchair. He can't really talk, but he asked me to tell you that he didn't die. And that's when I cried. I would like to give the microphone now to Oля, whose translations of Pavel, when we got this idea before, were the most honest and very masterful, in my view. I'll tell you a secret. She's a pretty amazing poet. If you ever get to hear her stuff in Russian, oh my God, it's a revelation. But she is pretty amazing in English as well. Oля Shenfeld.
So I'm going to read two translations of Pavel Risser, the guy we talked about, poet and soldier, and please forgive me if something is wrong. I was not brought in this country as a child. I came here when I was adult already, so probably my English is not that perfect, but I tried my best. Alice is leaving. Alice is leaving. It's easier not to see. She says farewell. My facts, I prefer the roses. Below are free, but pass to a secret tree. No candle nor bell, as your chat is hidden and closed. Orange and reddish is a zero outside. My liver is green, after party next door to Alice. The desperate rabbit is tucked in a cage inside, and my lips for him, like the barricade back in Paris. I am drunk like a sailor, with bonny unshaved cheeks. My mirror's like abyss, oh the abyss is somewhere near. But somebody's telling, some heaven reception leaks. You're looking, my Alice, through the glass of our common mirror. And second called Love. Oh, love me to the core and to the bone, from icy pole to the old pages and puddles. Get wild from dreams, where you are not alone. When April comes, he'll heal all our griefs and moans, with a bouquet of white returning swans, not bursting bubbles. Wear me like a brooch, all that's on your heart, with all dress codes for all your balls and visits. And May will come, and tipsy May will start. The life is easy, the love is easy. The light and smiles are jumping more and more. A hope and might are laying on the sun deck, next to the door. The X is thirsty for your neck and my neck. And one more translation from my Kiev and Chicago friend, Gennady Sergeyenko. He was supposed to be here today, unfortunately he could not. It's from Ukrainian, so I want to read the original poem too, just for sound of Ukrainian. So first English. Autumn. Fall is nearly washing, fall is neatly washing, greenery of the summer. Rainy watercolors are shining in the sun. Set we hair flying to the sky and farmer. Come October, dear, with your golden fun. But this lady's cheating, it's so sad to hear. Silly boy, she's lying, is it hard to ask? Yes, she looks so happy, and it's pretty clear that November's waiting, hiding in the dusk. Oh, my friend October, you don't want to listen, while you're still so handsome. while it's not too late. Time will come for sobbing, time will come to miss you, dying and reviving for the next year date. And in Ukrainian. Літній ранок осінь трохи застудила, та дощем помила ще зелений ліс, розпустила коси, наче пташка крила, фарби після сливи, жовтень їй приніс. Осінь це повіє, маєш ще коханця, ти не вір їй жовтні, цей ласкавий день, хоч себе цілує, зустрічай вранці, ввечері сьогодні, листопада жде. Ти хіба ж захоче слухати поради, вип'є слово трути, красень у свій вік. Зволажніють очі, як побачить зраду, і чекати буде щастя цілий рік. Це сталося.
Thank you so much. I told you she's pretty amazing. Just like this one was awesome. And of course, I was blessed with opportunities to read poetry in many places. And right around this time, people get tired of poetry. Known by experience. So to use the Chekhov's line, you know how he says that when there is a gun on the stage in the first act, it might, well actually he insists that it will fire. So there's a guitar over there, it's hiding. But it's about to fire. What we decided to do, and Nina, you have to be proud of us. We are well within the allocated time. So right now, just a closing poem from every one of us. And then, actually on the plan here, it says audience questions, remarks, hatred speeches. But we could do that over wine. Let's just sort of,
Gary,
yeah.
we also have one volunteer poet.
Oh, of course.
Yes,
course.
a guest poet.
Of course.
Whenever you can.
Okay, so let us put the finishing touches, let the gun fire, and then,
Okay.
if that's okay. So, Leonard Lundh.
Okay, to close for my part, poetry is political. Pretty much everything we do, whether we like it or not, is political. The trick that I was taught long ago was not to point fingers, but to make it a universal lesson. Because we're all guilty at one point or another. So let me leave you with a simple thing called elegy. Dig the small grave and place the smaller body so. Just so. The chill September rain and the warm human tears falling on her head will serve as the ritual washing of this puppy, barely 2 days old. Some future digger after truth, alien or human, kneeling with trowel and brush at this grave, will note in clear, careful script the wonder that a people would be so deliberate with the smallest of their God's creations, and so careless of themselves. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
So right
Thank
now,
you.
please welcome the closing from Leah Chernyakova.
And I'm going to still let you. Is it okay? There's no way to do it right, so we'll do it wrong.
It's almost necessary for all the poets from Eastern Europe to be a guitar poet. But not
So,
always.
this is Ukrainian song. I am very bad at singing. I'm very bad at English and Ukrainian, but Ukrainian songs are made the way that you just can't sing. You cannot stop. And if you know the words, please sing along. But part of it will be in English. Yes. So on board, had landed peacefully on tree branch. Sun has downed to the outskirts of the field. I have fallen. Love has torn my heart to clutches. For unfeeling, for enchantment of the field. Покохала, зачарована струною, заблукала та мелодія в гаю. Лай зелений журавлиною весною я принесла своє серце скрипалю. I approached him as a May queen on full splendor, reaching out as a spring to early March. Had I known those magic strings so tender, as a woman heart was targeting to touch. Сіла птаха білокрила на тополю, сіло сонце понад вечір за поля. Покохала, покохала я до болю молодого скрипаля. Thank you.
Дякуємо тобі, Лія.
Дякую.
Thank you so much. Оля, please.
Okay, and one more translation of my own poem. It's called The Lord's Wife. Just in this situation, I remembered the biblical story when Sodom and Gomorrah were ruined for their sins, and Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters were saved by angels, and they were required not to look back, but Lot's wife looked back on her house and became a pillar of salt. So in this situation, when a lot of refugees, a lot of migrants, all the women became like this Lot's wife. Their house is ruined, their city is destroyed, their neighbors are dead, and they have to save their kids. So I try to imagine myself in this situation. My town is under a bitter ash. My friends and enemies scared and bold. I am just a wife, I am a piece of trash. Oh, let me become a pillar of salt. Sodom was a kingdom of nasty souls. You know when to kill or forgive. Thank you, my lord, for these 2 sleepy girls. My daughters, you allowed to live. Please send them your angels to keep them safe. They both deserve a house of gold. Just let them live in the mountain cave. And let me become a pillar of salt. The clouds are hot like the iron leads, and I'm only a plain housewife. Why did you do this to all the kids? Thank you, my kids are the last survived.
Can I ask you a favor? Do you have the original of that poem?
Gary Light. Gary Light. Gary Light, your closing word, please.
It was a little negotiation for Oya to read the original. She's a tough cookie that way. So when this whole thing started happening in February, it was 24/7 on CNN and other channels as well, and people were shell-shocked as to that this is actually possible, that it's happening. Have you noticed? I mean, there are other news going on, and we're kind of getting used to every terrible hell that's happening on Earth. And suddenly the coverage started to be less and less, and then became minuscule. You know what? Let it remain minuscule, because when that beast decides to use a tactical nuclear weapon, suddenly it will be all over CNN again. Let's pray it will never happen. All I'm asking you is to remember that this is happening every day. Write to your senators, write to your congressmen. Just don't forget about this, please. The whole world loves Ukraine, which is being murdered. It's in righteous repentance, feelings of guilt, and such other feelings, but with an eternal smile, sailors, defenders of Zmeiny Island, will not hear that world, having been torn by artillery rounds to pieces. A violinist girl joins the civil defense of Kyiv. She sort of believes in God, but not so much in science. Icons tremble from explosions in 1,000-year-old Cathedral of St. Sophia, and the naked, exposed, wide-open Ukrainian sky is crying. Special forces from Kropivnitsky region don't count on being lucky, but on behalf of wounded Kharkiv and for the burning of Mriya, they killed point-blank Russian horde which entered suburban Bucha, thus covering simply the best they can the ancient capital city of Kyiv. In Chernihiv, a nurse bandages the wounds of a POW Russian. She will curse him for what he did in Ukraine later, through her eyes of Judas. But not now, when he's crying and whispers words about his mother. The plot thickens, either the ancient Greek myth or even biblical stories. In Irpin, only a kitten got out of a burning apartment building. She's being held and warmed inside an Israeli volunteer's park. After all, he's lucky for kids, counting back to his childhood in Odessa. He has his own 2 cats in Haifa. Holding this one, he's just silently praying. All of this is transpiring now, as clock in the spring move forward. My friends who are poets and soldiers walk into internal explosions. Americans and Europeans love Ukraine on TV, while it is being murdered. Enough of that love already. The Ukrainian sky needs to be close to non-humans. It might soon be too late, and there won't be another Ukraine in this world of ours. Thank you so much. So Nina, I think we have a poet amongst us who wasn't on the program. That's
I know,
our
I'm
mission.
so sorry, I'm being so rude.
No.
You can tell me no.
No, yes.
It's published poem, so
Yes.
that's
Yes,
okay.
indeed.
I'm
By
a
your-
Ukrainian poet, so
Yes,
I thought it'd be appropriate.
indeed, by all means. Why didn't you contact us before?
I-
You better be on the program.
You guys are so incredible. I can't even compete with them. So first of all,
Stop.
Gary, you are incredible. What you said for the Ukrainian community is absolutely true in every single way. What you guys did is poetry. It's beautiful. It's art. And without you, we wouldn't be here today. And I think that's what community is. I think that's why we're all here together. And I wanted to thank you guys for being here. And I wanted to thank you for speaking about Ukraine, but speaking from it from a way of compassion and love. And like you said, from a place that we know Ukraine that comes from beauty and not murder. And that's the Ukraine I want to talk about.
Thank you so much for doing this.
So I have,
microphone?
yes,
Go ahead.
thank you. So I have a book out. My name is Irina Klisht. I have a book out. It's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's not at the store, but you can order it online. Don't order it. It's pretty bad, but I wrote it in college. I'll have another book out soon, and you guys can buy that when I'll come back. But I wrote this before the war started. I'm from the Ivano-Frankivsk Oblast. I was born there, and so I always felt like I'm Ukrainian and I'm American, so I'm both 2 things at once. When the war broke out, I realized what my identity is, and that identity is being Ukrainian. Я розмовляю по-українськи дуже добре, в мене є словаці, but I also have the English version of it without an accent. I studied English, I majored in creative writing, and this is one of my poems from my book called Monster Size of the Sun. This was written in pre-war, but all the poems kind of have to do with war because the war started in 2014. I'm from very western part of Ukraine. The war has been going on forever, and I'm very pro-Ukraine, and I will support Ukraine till the end. So, Slava Ukraini. It's going to be one poem. It's going to be really short. I promise not to take out a lot of your time. It's called The Kingdom of Heat. Here, we know the word for cut. But they haven't taught us to slice, to murder, to kill. Yes, we know rain, paradise, force. Come back to me, whispered in the middle of the night, in the middle of a town that is burning, that is not on fire. The woman who shaves her head outside the middle of a town that is burning, that is not on fire. The woman who shaves her head outside the public restroom, throws it at her son. Here, for you, for us. War is something we have no language for. And yet here, take this cake and bring it to him. For you, from us. Here today, it is for us, by us, because of us. Thank you so much for your
Don't leave.
I can do it in Ukrainian too.
Yes.
Could you do it in Ukrainian? Could you read a couple more?
I could read a couple more. I could do. I'll read it in Ukrainian. How's that?
And a couple more.
I have a book. It's Monstrous Size of the Sun. So these are all edited. I'm not just
I hope you
bringing
brought the
them.
book.
I don't have the book, but I will give it for free. This one's called What We Left Behind in Eastern Ukraine. I'll do that one. We left August behind, crowded against curtains of sky, plastic and blue, and now a new older sky, and damaged. Pressed with lice and hibiscus sprung between cuts of cloud, silver echoes of white bulb. We left the trees, the bush tails of walnuts cracking with spite, for it is feeding us all that we did not take. The bitter taste of black shell, the crooked wing of satin brown, they fell for us like stone collected by squirrel, eaten by grass, as if everything the world has given us was returned, handed back to the earth, the ground, the urgent hiccup of the morning. Morning. I see empty house, wooden table through thick glass. I see tall grass and wild leaves, colorful and wide. I too can see dancing child with wing and arms spread along, spinning on legs faster, swinging on arms, hip and mouth, making the world dizzy, addicted with rage. Walnuts falling all around her. We too left the fingers touching chips of wheat, the sun a splinter of yellow cloth against the dancing, spinning girl. And I will just do one more, and then I'll be done and out of everyone's way. Let me just pick which one I want to share. Let me do the first one. This one's called Mountain of Sun. What's happening? Kind of. Alright. Mountain of Sun. Mountain of Sun. You thought chandelier. Spilled cider, grease. You thought olive oil and a yellow armchair, an open can of corn. You had cut yourself on the rim late one August. Do you remember? Blouse stained, washing machine broken, your hands in the sink, the soap all foam. Somebody kept knocking. Mountain of Sun. And you thought electricity, your 7th birthday in that sundress eating pineapple, wearing violet gloss, your mother's. You remember her so differently from photographs. Less bone, more eye. No hair, just skin. Mountain of Sun, and you thought bathtub. Her, all knees, shampooing your roots. Golden curls of caramel, honey. Rinse, then brush and dry and braid. Mountain of Sun, and you thought apricot. You thought sand, lace curtain, chrysanthemum and yolk. Ocean of fish, field of flower, mountain of sun. Why then have you never thought light? Thank you so much.
Can you do one in Ukrainian?
Yes, I will. I'll do the first one. Sorry, I just feel so bad because I don't want to. I know how poetry readings go towards that.
Stop. I just so wish good poets stop being so
You're.
modest.
Thank you so much. All right. This one's the first one I read, which is called Mountain of Sun. Королівство тепла. Тут нам знайоме слово різати. Але воно ще не навчило нас різати тіло. Так, ми розуміємо дощ, рай, села. Повернися до мене. тихо сказано посередині ночі, посередині міста, яке напало, яке не від вогню, яка жінка збирає волосся посеред місця, яке плаває, але від вогню. Жінка, яка збирає волосся за межі толота. За мене, за тебе, за нас війна не знає мови. Але візьми цей торт, принеси його до себе, від нас. Тут, сьогодні, це для нас, за нас і про нас.
Дякую. Thank you so much.
Я хотіла б
Yes.
зачитати вірш, якщо можна, але
Будь ласка.
українською, тому що я тут недавно і я погано.
Будь ласка.
Марія.
Can I just say what you just said, just for those? Maria is here just recently, and she asked to read a couple of poems in Ukrainian. Go ahead, please.
Цей вірш присвячений дівчинці Лізі з Маріуполя, яка загинула під час воєнних дій.
So this poem is dedicated to a girl whose name is Lisa from Mariupol, who died just recently during the war.
Лізі, ще одному маленькому ангелу. Тихо, тихо сходинкою, наче так намистинкою піднімалася в небо маленька душа. Тихо, тихо сходинкою, від спалаху жаринкою, від страждання зумліла, до небес поспіша. Тихо, тихо, без шуму, без ядучого слова, без прокльону в сторону, в чистоті віднеслась. Покидаючи землю, не зронивши сльозинки, так мала намистинка відпустила життя. Відчуваючи нечисть і ненависті хвилю, те, що до самозречень, це призводить людину. Те, що зводить на все, що готовий продавати їм душу, наче купиш ти нову. Руки в крові злочинців, душі чорні, зола, та ціною у світі буде завжди життя. Я не знаю задумок, я не знаю, що буде. Довіряти так хочу, та за що, о мій Боже? Тихо, тихо сходинкою, наче так намастинкою покидала, без болю покидала життя. Може, це все смирення, плата за нерозуміння, покидала не раз землю чиста душа.
Дякую вам. Дуже гарно Дякую. I wish I had enough talent to at least summarize the translation. I don't know if any other of my friends do, but if you send it to us, we would try. Would you be so kind as to send it to us? And we will try to translate.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sure Irina would love to take a stab at that as well.
Yeah.
So we'll make it happen. Leah is asking, since she's our friend from across the border, we love foreigners here from Wisconsin. So she is asking if she could finish with one more poem. Yes?
No. Gary did tell the full truth. I want to finish with one more poem in Ukrainian. And this poem is called Kabuni, which is watermelons. You know that Kherson is very famous for watermelons. And me, as a student, were partaking in gathering these watermelons when we went to collective farms to help farmers. So I remember it very well. But it also has some symbolic meaning right now, and we all wait for this to happen. Де троянська війна полихає трояндою, де палають троянських коней табуни, кавуни на баштанах чекають на янголів. Кавуни. Злого, темного часу, що не до солодощів, головами смурними істот неземних, серед трупів та лунок лежать приголомшені кавуни. Наче яйця дракона, посіяні в полі, то таке не побачиш у страшному сні, що на світ повилазять, як триснуть поволі кавуни. А коли задихнешся від суму і сумнівів, геть від себе жени, та й пильнуй. За вікном стиглий месяць виходить в зеленій сутінки кавуном. Тож тримай обережно, бо це вже не яблуко. Для твоїх, Україно, незламних синів, най вони причастяться червоної м'якоті кавунів.
We would like to thank everybody who made it here today. And actually, Russia's main thing is that it's accusing Ukraine of being Nazi. You know, in the Ukrainian army there are Jews, Russians, Georgians, Armenians. This Ukraine moved beyond certain nationality differences. And in the Ukrainian army, tonight and tomorrow, they will be celebrating upcoming Jewish New Year. Shana Tova to everybody. And thank you very much for joining us.
There's still some refreshments, so feel free to
Сіла птаха, білокрила на тополю, сіло сонце понад вечір за поля. Покохала
НАТО захочет в небесную Украину, в раскаянии праведном, чувстве вины и прочем. Но с грустной усмешкой защитники со Змеиного НАТО откажут, будучи градами порваны в клочья. Девчонка-скрипачка из киевской теробороны верит в Господа Бога, но не в Бориса и Глеба. В Святой Софии от взрывов дрожат иконы, и плачет открытое настежь голое небо. Крапивницкий спецназ не вспомнит счастливый случай, но за убитый Харьков и за сожженную Мрию сжигает в упор орду, пришедшую в Бучу, закрывая с собой единственный в мире Киев. В Гостомеле медсестра бинтует пленного из Рязани. Она проклянет его позже глазами Юдифи, но не сейчас, когда он рыдает и шепчет слова о маме. Все происходит, как в древнегреческом мифе. В Ирпене из горящей квартиры выбрался только котенок. Его согревает за пазухой израильский доброволец, везет ему на котов еще с одесских пеленок. Он из Газы спас и привез двоих, и теперь вот стоит и молится. Все это вершится сейчас по весеннему сплину. В разрывы и вечность уходят любимые люди. Америка и Европа любят небесную Украину. Не нужно любви, просто закройте от нелюдей небо. Другой Украины у этой планеты уже не будет.